Hello, and welcome. Imagine walking down a familiar street at dawn, but seeing it anew. Each cracked pavement stone a canyon, every shaft of light a spotlight revealing hidden magic. What if creativity isn't reserved for geniuses in ivory towers, but lives in our everyday gaze, waiting for us to open our eyes? If you find this summary helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Booksnap, and comment below the title of the book you'd like us to summarize next. We'll make it happen soon. Marisol, a young writer stuck in the drudgery of social media scrolls, trudges past the same corner cafe she's passed thousands of times. One morning, her sleep-fogged mind catches something different. The steam rising from a discarded coffee cup, swirling into the cold air like a ghost's breath. The yellow awning's edge, frayed and weathered, mirrors the ragged hem of her own life's routine. In that moment, Marisol feels a flicker of wonder, the ordinary street transformed into a stage for unseen dramas. Thomas, a veteran painter, believed he had seen every shade of sky over his coastal town. Then, at his easel, one silvery dawn, he noticed the gull's wing catching an unexpected glint. Neither white nor gray, but the pale lavender of distant thunderclouds. That nuance, overlooked by countless sunrises, ignited a new series of seascapes that captured the fragile edge between calm and storm. Austin Kleon, in The Creative Act, teaches that creativity begins with seeing, training our minds to notice the extraordinary within the mundane. He calls it walking the world sideways, shifting perspective until the familiar feels new. That shift can happen anywhere, in the curve of a fern, the echo of footsteps in an empty hallway, the unexpected melody in city traffic. Marisol, armed with nothing but her notebook, starts jotting stray images. The amber smear of autumn leaves on wet asphalt, the way a bus door sighs open like a portal. Her daily commute becomes a treasure hunt, each observation a clue in the puzzle of her next story. She learns to carry creative binoculars, a mindset that magnifies the tiny textures and whispers of life. Where once she saw routine, she now sees possibility. A bus advertisement becomes an allegory of longing. A sidewalk crack holds the promise of new growth. The world, she realizes, is an endless gallery of raw material, waiting for her to frame and refine it. But seeing anew isn't passive. It demands curiosity and the courage to pause, to slow down even when deadlines loom. Marisol's colleagues think she's dawdling, but in the stillness, she uncovers the seed of a story that pulses with authenticity. Her writing, once formulaic, now brims with these vivid details, each a tear in the canvas that lets new color bleed through. Thomas, too, rediscovers his joy in observation. He swaps his broad brushes for tiny liners, painting details no one notices at first glance. The gossamer threads of a spider's web strung between dock pilings, each bead of dew a universe. His new critics call his work haunting. He knows it simply reflects the layers waiting to be seen by anyone who dares to look. A friend once told Thomas, "I see the world through a straw." His reply, "Then make each sip count." Creativity, Kleon reminds us, is not about grand revelations, but about the act of noticing, turning our attention into a practice, like a muscle strengthened by daily reps. To cultivate this art, Kleon suggests exercises. Keep a daybook of fleeting moments, switch your routine routes, photograph obstacles, collect discarded objects. In these small rituals, we train our minds to catch the light in shadows and to hear the murmur beneath silence. As you move through your day, imagine the camera lens of your mind focusing on one overlooked detail. A crack in a wall, a scuff on a shoe, an overheard snippet of dialogue. Let it surprise you. Let it become the spark that guides your own creation, whether a poem, a painting, a solution, or simply a deeper sense of wonder. In the tapestry of creativity, every thread begins with this first stitch, seeing with new eyes. And once we start, the world unfolds like a story waiting to be told. Our stories woven from the threads we choose to notice. At the heart of every masterpiece lies a moment of blankness, a raw, unshaped mass that trembles with possibility and terror in equal measure. When sculptor Anna first stands before a massive marble block, its surface gleams in the workshop's morning light like an unspoken promise. She grips her chisel and hammer, heart hammering in sync. The block offers no guidance, no outline. It is pure unknown. Anna's mentor, old Master Piero, watches from the corner. "The unknown is your ally," he whispers. "Without it, there is nothing new." But to Anna, the chisel feels like a knife poised at her own skin. Each tentative tap threatens to ruin hours of work, to unleash a flaw that cannot be undone. Her first blow chips off a chunk, an accidental gouge more jagged than graceful. Panic surges. What if I've ruined it? Yet Piero leans in and traces the new contour with his finger. "Ah," he says, "there it is. Follow that line." In that moment, Anna realizes that the unknown isn't a void, but a dialogue. Each unexpected strike offers feedback, a nudge toward the shape waiting to emerge. Day after day, she returns to the block, chisel dancing between precision and accident. She carves blindfolded at times, trusting her hands to sense the emerging form. With each pass, the marble begins to look less like cold stone and more like the silhouette of a dancer mid-leap. The unknown yields patterns if you listen. Austin Kleon reminds us that uncertainty fuels creativity. When we step into the blank space, whether a block of marble, a blank page, or an empty canvas, we invite the unpredictable. We relinquish rigid control and allow intuition, accident, and chance to collaborate. In that collaboration, originality emerges. Anna's breakthrough comes on a rainy afternoon. Tired from endless strokes, she pauses and gazes at the damp courtyard outside, where raindrops carve channels across stone. Struck by the patterns, she returns to her sculpture and, without overthinking, taps a flowing series of curves into the marble's flank, an echo of the rain's choreography. The block, once unyielding, now seems alive, flowing with movement. She realizes that embracing the unknown means cultivating a mindset of exploration rather than perfection. Instead of mapping every strike, she learns to feel the block's resistance, to hear the tone of each tap, and to see the way light dances off emerging planes. Each discovery, often born from a mistake, becomes a guidepost. Beyond the workshop, Anna encounters another blankness, starting a novel about her childhood. She writes the first sentence, then freezes, terrified of miscasting memory into fiction. But recalling her time with marble, she begins to write unguarded fragments, snatches of dialogue, sensory impressions, fleeting emotions, without worrying about structure or coherence. Those fragments, unexpected and raw, later coalesce into characters with vivid lives. Kleon calls this process embracing the muck of uncertainty. Creativity is messy. It involves trying, failing, and trying again, all without guarantees. It demands that we sit with discomfort, that we tread into depths where no map exists. Yet in that murky space we find paths no one has walked before. Consider the story of a composer commissioned to write for an avant-garde ballet. The dancers wanted music that would shift in response to their movements, but no technology existed to do this in real time. Instead of bemoaning the lack, the composer collaborated with engineers to build motion-sensing microphones that captured dancers' steps and fed them through a modular synthesizer. The result was an improvisational symphony, born of real-time feedback, where every leap and turn elicited new harmonies. From a place of unknown constraints arose a groundbreaking creation. Anna and the composer share a secret. They treat uncertainty not as an obstacle, but as a collaborator. They listen to what the medium, marble, code, movement, reveals when left alone, then respond with curiosity rather than fear. Each response shapes the next question, propelling them deeper into the creative process. To embrace the unknown in our own endeavors, Kleon suggests making discovery edits. Instead of perfecting every sentence, paint stroke, or line of code as you go, reserve a first pass for exploration, letting intuition lead, allowing mistakes to surface. Then, in a second pass, you refine and shape. This two-stage approach honors both the spontaneity of the unknown and the craft of deliberate revision. In Anna's workshop, the final sculpture stands not as a single triumphant vision, but as the sum of countless dialogues between chisel and stone, plan and accident, intention and surprise. Each curve bears the imprint of risk taken, each smooth surface the memory of rough beginnings. When Anna steps onto the gallery floor for her first solo show, visitors gasp at the kinetic energy captured in marble. She smiles, recalling that tremor of fear at the first strike, and knowing that creativity's greatest gift arises when we step into the unknown and let it carve us as much as we carve it. Constraints can feel like walls, yet in the arms of limitation, the seed of invention often blooms. Julian, a young composer living in a cramped city apartment, longed to write an orchestral masterpiece. But his building frowned on noise. No drums, no brass, not even a piano after 9 p.m. His only companion was an aging ukulele tuned slightly flat and the muffled hum of traffic beyond his thin walls. At first, Julian despaired. How could he capture the richness of strings and horns with just 4 nylon strings and a few chords? Each evening, he sat alone in the dim glow of a desk lamp, ukulele in hand, straining for grand melodies that refused to come. The apartment felt like a cage, and with every muted strum, his hope dimmed. Then, one restless night, he began to experiment. Removing 2 strings, he retuned the remaining pair to open fifths, generating a droning resonance. He discovered that this simplified tuning forced him to invent melodies within narrow intervals, exploring microshifts in rhythm and timbre. He looped each phrase on a humble recording app, layering one ukulele line atop another until a textured harmony emerged, transforming his cramped quarters into a cathedral of sound. Austin Kleon calls this the alchemy of constraints, the notion that borders and boundaries can catalyze creativity rather than suffocate it. When possibilities narrow, the mind lifts its gaze, searching for pathways that might otherwise be overlooked. Julian's constraints became a creative crucible. The ukulele's 2 strings turned from handicap to hallmark, forging a signature style that later drew the attention of avant-garde ensembles. Across the ocean, in a remote village lacking materials, sculptor Kaito fashioned his finest work from driftwood and discarded metal scraps. He traced curves in rusty rebar, coaxed form from warped planks, and polished found stones into mosaic inlays. Critics traveled from the city to marvel at how he transformed scarcity into breathtaking installations, each piece a testament to the power of inventiveness born in limitation. Constraints also guide grander forms of creation. When NASA first tasked engineers with packing a laboratory for space, budgets and payload restrictions threatened to clip their ambitions. Yet they responded by miniaturizing instruments, integrating multiple sensors into single chips, designing collapsible arrays, and pioneering 3D printed components in zero gravity. The space station's lab, a marvel of microengineering, stands today because constraints demanded they invent what once seemed impossible. Back in his apartment, Julian's late-night recordings echoed across online platforms. Musicians from around the world contacted him, sending digital files of bowed instruments, soft percussion, and synthesized textures. He wove these into his ukulele loops, crafting an international chamber ensemble that never met in person but played as one. His debut album, titled Bound by Strings, became a quiet bestseller in experimental circles, proof that creative alchemy thrives not in abundance but in restriction. Kleon emphasizes that constraints come in many forms: time, budget, materials, social norms, even self-imposed rules. He recounts the story of a celebrated filmmaker who, when budget cuts forced him to abandon location shoots, pivoted to a single-room setting, framing his entire narrative within 4 walls. The result was a claustrophobic masterpiece whose intensity and intimacy eclipsed his earlier epics. Sometimes, when the canvas shrinks, our imagination expands. We see this in writing, too. The renowned poet who composed only haikus found boundless depth in 17 syllables, each line a tightrope of imagery and emotion. The novelist who penned an entire book without the letter E demonstrated that linguistic constraints can spark playful ingenuity, turning obstacles into art. Julian's journey illustrates another secret of constraint-driven creativity. Collaboration emerges when resources are scarce. Seeking new sounds, he invited other composers to remix his ukulele tracks. One added field recordings of rain on tin roofs, another fused whispered vocals into the mix. They traded constraints, his two-string loops for their urban soundscapes, collaboratively birthing a hybrid genre that defied classification. Constraints also sharpen purpose. When Kaito learned that his village faced displacement by a dam project, he channeled his artistic constraints into activism, crafting installations that raised awareness of his community's plight. The limitations of material mirrored the villagers' shrinking lands, and the art became a rallying cry. Evidence that boundaries can embolden both creativity and conviction. To embrace the alchemy of constraints in your own life, Cleon advises writing your own creative contract. List the rules you must follow, the limits you impose, word counts, time limits, chosen mediums, and then commit wholly to them. In that commitment, you carve out a clear arena for invention, where every decision, no matter how small, ripples outward into unexpected breakthroughs. Julian's contract was simple. 4 nylon strings, 40 minutes per day, no external instruments until he had composed 20 minutes of original ukulele music. That rule, he later admitted, saved him from overwhelm. It kept his practice focused and fun, turning each session into a playful exploration rather than a daunting quest. Constraints also teach us resilience. When deadlines loom and resources dwindle, we can flinch or find a way forward. That brilliance born at the edge of our capacities, whether a protest mural painted with leftover house paint or a startup launched from a kitchen table, often outshines ventures born in comfort's cradle. As dawn breaks on Julian's latest creation, a full-length piece scored entirely for two-string ukulele, found sounds, and online collaborations, he reflects on how far he's come. His apartment, once a prison, became a workshop. His humble ukulele, a portal. His constraints, a crucible. In your own creative world, you may lack grand studios, endless time, or pristine materials. Embrace those limits. Let them challenge you to look deeper, to collaborate wider, to invent braver. In the alchemy of constraints, limitations melt away, revealing the unexpected gold of innovation. In the hush before dawn, Maya sits cross-legged on her living room floor, a patina of incense smoke curling toward the ceiling. Her sketchbook lies open, pages blank and expectant. She reached for her pen dozens of times, only to pull her hand back, uncertain which of her inner voices deserved to speak first. The critic that demanded perfection, the marketer that urged trend-chasing, or the childlike wonder that whispered unfiltered truths. Maya remembers her grandfather's workshop, where he carved birds from fallen branches. He didn't plan every curve. He listened to the grain, letting the wood's whispers guide his chisel. She realizes that creativity, too, thrives when we learn to listen, when we quiet the clamor of others' advice and tune into our deep selves. Austin Kleon calls this listening to the inner voice, the practice of creating space for our authentic ideas to emerge. Like an old radio that needs fine-tuning, our minds require silence to receive the frequencies of genuine inspiration. Maya closes her eyes and breathes, sweeping away the day's noise. In the quiet, she recalls a half-remembered memory of childhood story time, her mother's voice melting into playful tones as she animated tales of dragons and sea people. That voice, she realizes, still hums beneath her adult apprehensions. She lifts her pen and begins to write. A single line: "The dragon sleeps beneath the tide." Surprised by its resonance, she expands it into a series of images: scales glinting under moonlight, saltwater claw marks on broken ships, an ancient lullaby carried in driftwood. The words flow unbidden, guided by her deep self, not by critique or comparison. Across town, filmmaker Andre stands alone in a soundstage, reviewing rushes of a scene he shot last month. The actors' performances feel safe but hollow, framed by dialogue that echoes cliches. He can't shake the feeling that he's telling someone else's story, not his own. So he sits in the empty theater, tapping out a silent drumbeat with his fingers against the seat back, a quiet ritual he uses to hear his inner rhythm. He closes his eyes and envisions the story he truly wants to tell. Not a glossy thriller, but a meditative journey through grief and memory. He senses the pulse of cinema in the pause between frames, in the swell of a single cello note. Listening to that inner cadence, he rewrites the script, stripping away spectacle, deepening character moments, and weaving scenes that echo the heartbeat he discovered in silence. Cleon suggests rituals to cultivate this listening: daily solitude, whether a walk in the park or a quiet moment with a cup of tea; mindful journaling, where we let thoughts spill without editing; creative constraints, like writing 3 lines of poetry each morning no matter what. These practices aren't extra tasks. They're portals into our inner worlds. Maya's ritual becomes a sunrise practice. 5 minutes of breath, 5 minutes of free writing, 5 minutes of drawing a single flowing line. Over weeks, she notices that her ideas deepen, no longer flitting like butterflies but emerging as vivid creatures she can hold. She begins to illustrate them: a dragon scale pattern that morphs into architectural motifs, tidal maps that echo personal journeys of loss and longing. Listening to our deep selves also invites vulnerability. When Maya shares her morning sketches with a friend, she feels exposed, each line a glimpse of her private longings. Yet the friend's quiet admiration emboldens her. She learns that authenticity resonates. When we share our true voices, others lean in, not away. Andre's first screening of his revised film is in a small art house, not a blockbuster premiere. The audience sits in near darkness, murmurs fading as candles flicker at the back. As the final frame lingers, a single shot of the theater's empty stage, some viewers weep, others sit in reverent silence. Andre realizes that listening to his deep self led him to a story that speaks to hearts, not just screens. Yet listening requires boundaries. Our inner voices can be drowned by the cacophony of social media, deadlines, and distractions. Cleon warns against forced productivity, the trap of believing that creativity happens only under pressure. Instead, he champions ambient awareness, letting ideas percolate beneath conscious thought, then emerging when least expected. His favorite example: a scientist who solved a complex equation during a leisurely stroll, years after abandoning it at his desk. To practice this, Maya schedules no agenda time, moments in her calendar marked simply as "listen." She goes to a local pond at dusk, watching the reflections ripple across water, letting her mind drift until images surface. Often, her next story idea arrives not as a flash of brilliance, but as a gentle nudge, a whispered phrase or a vivid color she notes in her sketchbook. Listening to the deep self also fosters creative resilience. When editors rejected her first short story, Maya didn't chase formulas for market success. She returned to her ritual, listening anew. This time, she discovered a deeper theme: a story not about dragons or tides, but about a woman learning to trust her voice. That story, raw and unpolished, later won a small literary prize and, more importantly, reclaimed Maya's faith in her creative instincts. In every act of listening, we affirm that creativity is not a commodity but a conversation between our deepest selves and the world we wish to shape. By carving out sacred spaces of silence, by honoring the whispers beneath our fears, we unlock the authenticity that defines our art. As Dawn paints the sky in soft pastels, Maya closes her sketchbook and breathes deeply. She feels a quiet glow, less the thrill of creation, more the contentment of alignment. She knows the daily work of listening will not always be easy, but she now understands it as the compass guiding her creative journey. May you, too, find your own rituals of listening, to the murmur of memory, the pulse of intuition, the architecture of your heart, so that your creations resonate not just as echoes of the world's noise, but as expressions of your truest self. Before the first light touches the horizon, Gabriel ties his running shoes with ritual precision, laces doubled, knots firm but forgiving. He steps onto the dew-damp lawn, the world hushed except for the whisper of wind through the pines. Each morning, as the sky transitions from indigo to lavender, he embarks on the same 3-mile loop, not for exercise alone, but for the creative sanctuary it provides. In The Creative Act, Cleon shows that creative rituals, small, repeated practices, prime our minds for inspiration. They aren't chains that bind us to routine. They're anchors that give our creative selves a home. Gabriel's run is more than a warm-up. It's a moving meditation where ideas clue dance in the margins of his mind. He learns to listen to the cadence of footsteps, each breath melding into the next, until his thoughts settle into a flow deeper than thought itself. A week into this ritual, a novel concept emerges. A story woven around a vanished village, only discoverable by those who walk its ancient paths at dawn. Gabriel jots lines into a pocket notebook, scribbles that later become the opening chapter of his newest book. Had he ignored the ritual, had he risen reluctantly or bypassed the run, the idea might have slipped away, buried beneath the day's demands. Across town, choreographer Lucia begins each rehearsal with an odd exercise. Dancers pair up blindfolded and mirror each other's movements. They sway, stumble, recover, trusting the subtlest cues of muscle and breath. This daily ritual primes their bodies to hear movement before it's visible, sharpening their collective intuition. Over time, Lucia notices the troupe's performances deepen. They move not as individuals, but as a single organism, alive with responsive artistry. Cleon emphasizes that rituals cultivate creative readiness by signaling to our brains that it's time to create. Whether it's lighting a candle, brewing a cup of tea, or simply clearing a desk of clutter, these acts become Pavlovian cues. They release the creative neurotransmitters and shift us from thinking to making. Gabriel's shoes don't just lace. They unlock his imaginative channels. Lucia's blindfold becomes a portal to embodied trust. Consider the sculptor Naima, who begins each studio session by playing a single piano key. A clear, resonant note that echoes through the loft like a starting pistol. In its vibration, she finds rhythm, letting the sound guide her hands as they coax forms from clay. That single tone becomes her beacon, signaling the transition from the outside world into the creative realm. Rituals also frame our relationship with time. Gabriel's run marks sunrise, anchoring his writing practice to the day's first glow. He writes for an hour, words falling onto the page as steadily as his footsteps. If traffic snarls or emails surge later, he returns to his desk unshaken because his creative work was secured in that ritual. Lucia's troupe moves through their warm-up ritual before performing on stage. No backstage jitters can unmoor them, for they've already rehearsed trust and focus. Yet rituals must remain flexible. Cleon warns that when a ritual turns into a rigid demand, it stifles rather than frees. Gabriel occasionally swaps his run for a dawn swim when a sprained ankle demands gentler movement. He finds the water's embrace offers a different rhythm, yet the same creative nourishment. Lucia sometimes replaces blindfolds with whispered storytelling when dancers need fresh stimuli, knowing that the heart of ritual lies in intention, not formula. In a dusty corner of a rural church, organist Emiliano lights a single beeswax candle before each improvisation session. The flame's warm glow illuminates the organ's gleaming pipes and, he says, connects me to centuries of music. That candle ritual becomes his creative lineage. No matter how innovative his harmonies, he remains anchored in the tradition that gave him rhythm and resonance. Rituals can also be communal. In a co-working space, a group of illustrators greets each morning by exchanging art seeds, a simple sketch or color swatch each has created without context. These seeds become prompts for their day's work, sparking ideas they might never have found alone. That daily exchange isn't a critique session. It's a shared rite that plants creativity in each participant's mind. Gabriel's writing circle shares a similar ritual. They begin every meeting by reading one sentence from whatever they wrote that morning. No editing, no commentary, just sharing raw expression. This moment of collective vulnerability dissolves isolation, reminding each member that they aren't solitary islands but part of a creative archipelago. Through these rituals, creativity becomes less about occasional flashes of inspiration and more about a way of being. We move through life with awareness, marking transition points, morning to day, practice to performance, silence to expression, with acts that shape our minds and spirits. The more we honor these rituals, the more creative moments we collect, each one a drop in the reservoir of our ongoing work. As dawn shifts into morning light, Gabriel pulls up to his desk with quiet joy. His shoes may be muddy, but his mind is clear, his story alive with promise. Lucia's dancers finish their mirrored warm-up and flow effortlessly into choreography that seems both spontaneous and inevitable. Naima's studio fills with the scent of beeswax and clay as the first note fades, and her hands rise to shape another form. In your own life, what ritual might awaken your creative spirit? What small, repeated act might signal your mind to open, to notice, to make? Perhaps it's a walk, a breath, a song, a shared glance across a table. Cultivate it with care, but not rigidity. Let it evolve as you evolve. And remember, the heart of any creative ritual is presence. The conscious decision to meet the blank page, the uncut marble, the silent dance floor, not with fear, but with an open mind and a willing heart. Through rituals, we learn that creativity is not a spontaneous gift, but the flowering of patience, intention, and repeated practice. Each loop around the block, each candle lit, each chorus of sketches exchanged, weaves our creative selves into the tapestry of the world, one ritual at a time. Before Elena picked up her camera that fateful day, she prided herself on precision. Each shot was carefully composed, rule of thirds, golden hour, perfect focus. But on a misty morning at the lake, her trusted lens slipped from her wet-gloved hand and shattered against a granite boulder. Elena stared in horror as glass fragments sparkled in the reeds. Without that lens, her plan to capture the sunrise's soft glow collapsed. She sat on the dock, camera useless in her lap. Framing photos had always felt safe. A line, click, capture. Now, her familiar process lay in ruins. Panic rippled through her. What if I've lost my creative edge? What if I can't take a single good photo again? But as fog drifted over the water, she noticed shapes emerging, reeds bending under droplets, distant mist forming ethereal patterns. Her eye, unburdened by gear, woke to details she had previously bypassed. At home, she rummaged through drawers and found an old Holga, a plastic toy camera known for its quirks. Light leaks, vignettes, soft focus. At first, she resisted. A good photographer wouldn't use this. Yet, with nothing to lose, she loaded film and headed back to the lake. The Holga's imperfections lent a dreamlike quality to her images. The sun's reflection smudged like watercolor, each frame a fragment of memory rather than a literal record. Austin Kleon writes that failure can be fertile ground for creativity when we turn mishaps into tools rather than obstacles. Elena's broken lens, a moment of loss, became the catalyst for stylistic exploration. She learned to embrace what she initially perceived as flaws. The Holga's light leaks became sunbeams, its soft edges a veil of nostalgia. Each mistake image resonated with emotional depth, capturing not the scene itself but her personal response to it. This transformation mirrors the journey of Alessandro, an architect whose ambitious bridge design collapsed in early simulations. Rather than starting over, he studied the failure's stress points and pivoted to a new design that celebrated symmetry and organic form, creating a landmark now hailed for its unconventional beauty. His initial failure, once feared as career-ending, turned into a portal of innovation. Elena's newfound style led to an invitation, a gallery show focusing on the interplay between technology and memory. Her Broken Lens series, images tinged with the Holga's unpredictability, became the exhibit's highlight, conveying the fragility of experience and the beauty hidden in imperfection. Critics praised her for seeing the world through broken glass, a poetic testament to her resilience. Cleon suggests reframing failure as feedback. When a lens shatters, we can lament lost equipment, or we can probe what the accident reveals about our focus, literally and metaphorically. Elena's refusal to abandon her craft led her to discover a voice she never knew she had, one that spoke in soft hues and fragmented light. Failure also teaches us adaptability. In a design firm, when lead designer Priya's prototype malfunctioned in a live demo, she faced humiliation. Yet she seized the moment, improvising a narrative about technology evolving through trial. Her honest admission and quick pivot endeared her to clients, leading to a more collaborative project approach that balanced innovation with user testing. Her initial botch became a masterclass in transformation under pressure. For Elena, every subsequent shoot incorporated a disruption ritual. She began including at least one broken or unconventional tool, an expired roll of film, a scratched mirror, a DIY filter, in her kit. Those elements, she realized, spurred creativity by introducing variables beyond her control. The results were often unexpected but always compelling. Failure's creative fuel also lies in vulnerability. When Elena shared her Broken Lens story with a community of photographers, she found camaraderie rather than judgment. Others recounted their own equipment disasters, a flooded sensor, a lost memory card, a misfocused wedding album, and in those shared tales, they found solidarity. Their experiments with alternative techniques became workshops, sparking collective breakthroughs. Beyond tools, failures in creative confidence also spark growth. Elena remembers the first time she submitted a photo to a juried competition and faced rejection without critique. Heartbroken, she shelved her work. Months later, after her Holga epiphany, she revisited those early images and found raw emotional honesty she had overlooked. She resubmitted, not in pursuit of awards, but to witness her evolution. That resubmission, born of resilience, won her first accolade and, more importantly, restored her faith in continuing despite setbacks. Elena's story embodies Cleon's message. Failures are not dead ends, but detours. They redirect us to landscapes we might never have found on a straight path of success. The Broken Lens forced her to unlearn reliance on clarity and to embrace the poetry of blur. Through that blur, she discovered her authentic creative voice. As you navigate your own creative journey, remember, when a chosen path collapses, ask not, "Why me?" but "What might I build from these fragments?" Gather the shards, broken tools, shattered plans, stinging rejections, and let them reflect new patterns of thought. In the mosaic of failure, hidden images await, insights, innovations, and expressions that define the creative act itself. So, find your own Holga, the tool born of accident, and invite it into your practice. Embrace missteps as experiments, stumbles as new steps. For creativity is not perfection's domain, but the playground of possibility uncovered when we let failure speak and then listen deeply to its lessons. The classroom falls silent as the last bell rings, and Mr. Ellison surveys his students' artwork lining the walls, a vibrant tapestry of hopes, fears, and discoveries. Each painting, poem, or sculpture reflects a facet of their inner worlds. Together, they form a mosaic of the human spirit. He steps to the back of the room, breathing in the scent of fresh paint and crumpled paper, feeling the hum of creativity that lingered here all year. Across from him stands Lena, who began art class convinced she lacked talent. Over months, she learned not just technique but the courage to trust her voice. Her final piece, a self-portrait in mixed media, merges scrap metal with delicate watercolor, symbolizing strength born from vulnerability. She watches Mr. Ellison's gaze, remembering the first day she hid behind her desk and the teacher's gentle invitation. "Show me what only you can see." Austin Kleon's final lesson in the creative act is that creativity is not merely what we produce, but how we live and the presence we bring to every moment. It's a way of being that radiates outward, inviting others to lean into their own creative potential. Mr. Ellison closes the door behind him, leaving the room to its quiet reverence, then picks up Lena's self-portrait and carries it to the school hallway, where it will greet every student walking by, a beacon of possibility. Earlier that morning, Mr. Ellison had begun class with his own ritual. He placed a single white carnation in a vase at the front desk, a symbol of new beginnings, and asked students to whisper one word that captured their creative journey. Courage, wonder, freedom, connection. The words hung in the air like invisible constellations, each one a star in the creative act. In the hallway's soft spotlight, Lena's portrait hangs beside other presence pieces. A clay vessel fashioned by Malik that holds kindness folded into its entrance. A photographic sequence by Amina capturing the silent dance of falling leaves. A poem by Jordan that traces the echo of childhood laughter. Each work is more than art. It is an invitation to pause, to feel, to engage with life more deeply. Mr. Ellison's presence in these moments, the way he curated the display, welcomed every student's voice and honored their efforts, embodies the ultimate creative act, fostering environments where others can flourish. His role transcends instruction. He is a guardian of possibility, a conductor of collective imagination, and a living testament to the alchemy that happens when we truly show up for each other. Outside the school, the world rushes on. Cars honk, deadlines loom, screens pulse with notification lights. But within these hallways, time slows. Passers-by linger, drawn by the authenticity radiating from each piece. Parents walk their children to view the presence gallery. Teachers from other departments peek in to whisper their admiration. And even the principal stops by, reminded of why this place exists. Kleon reminds us that creative presence is contagious. When we live with curiosity, vulnerability, and generosity, others feel emboldened to do the same. Mr. Ellison's example ripples beyond the art room. Students carry his insights into science labs, lunch tables, and playgrounds, experimenting with questions, sketching molecules, composing friendship poems, or simply daring to stand at the center of a group and share an idea. In a nearby park, Lena meets her friend Marcus, who confides his fear that his coding skills lack artistry. She smiles, touches her portrait on the wall, and says, "Artistry is showing up with your voice. Share your code the way you see patterns in numbers." Inspired, Marcus begins scripting an interactive visualization of city traffic, an artistic project born from equations. Back in the classroom, Mr. Ellison gathers his students for one final circle. They light a single candle, each placing a drop of colored wax into a communal jar, blue for bravery, red for passion, yellow for joy. As the wax mingles, they reflect on their journeys, the ways they saw anew, embraced mystery, thrived within limits, listened deeply, practiced rituals, and turned failures into fuel. The collective wax jar, a living sculpture of their shared presence, glows softly, a reminder that creativity binds us in warmth and light. Cleon's final invitation is simple: to practice the creative act not only in our work but in every relationship and setting, to notice, to venture into the unknown, to use our constraints, to listen to our inner voices, to honor our rituals, to embrace failure, and to bring presence wherever we go. When we do, our lives themselves become canvases, stage plays, and symphonies, rich tapestries woven from the threads of every choice, every moment, every connection. As the candle flames dance in unison, Mr. Ellison smiles, knowing that this room, once a blank slate, now carries the echoes of countless creative acts. And beyond these walls, he sees a world brightened by presence, people pausing to savor small moments, sharing their truths without fear, and co-creating environments that lift others into the light. May you, too, carry this creative presence into your own life, shaping each moment into an act of wonder, compassion, and authenticity. For in the end, the greatest masterpiece we can create is the life we live, radiant with the glow of our shared humanity. Shared humanity. Shared humanity. Shared humanity. Shared humanity. Shared